Hey, how you doing? This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 8th of December, 2024. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dale Franks.
I'm Michael Wade.
And we have had an interesting week, and it's been an interesting week. And you know, I really don't want to talk a whole bunch about politics tonight, because I think it's been a fascinating week for the culture, and I really wanted to look at that because there's some politics stuff that we can get to a little bit later, but I really want to focus on this murder in New York City of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. The person who killed him had written some words on the bullets. Deny, depose, delay, which are, I guess, has become sort of a catchphrase about people who've dealt with healthcare companies in court about what their tactics are. So we already have
there was a book.
Oh, okay. A book. Yes. Thank you. So this was clearly a targeted killing, and there are some questions that we don't understand. How did he know that Brian Thompson was going to be walking across the street at that time? The meeting wasn't supposed to start for a couple of more hours. He shows up 15 minutes prior and is just hanging out there. Effectively, yet rather incompetently, manages to shoot him and then hops on an e-bike and gets away. The cops tell us that they have a name for the guy. Presumably he'll get caught at some point in the not too distant future. But he was clearly there for a reason. And one of the things that happened in the interim to that was the response of people on social media. I submitted a claim for my condolences, but it got denied. So sad. 31,000 likes. I know he's looking up at us now. 24.1 thousand likes. Was the hospital in network? 31.2 thousand likes. Then, because she can never leave anything well enough alone, we have Taylor Lorenz, who was formerly of the Washington Post and the New York Times, where she was supposedly a very well-respected journalist, posted this cool little thing here, CEO down. And then says, people have a very justified hatred towards insurance company CEOs because they're responsible for an unfathomable amount of death and suffering. As someone against death and suffering, I think it's good to call out this broken system and the people in power who enable it.
And she also said, is it any wonder that we want them dead?
Yeah, the tweet that is on the left, Taylor Lorenz, and people wonder why we want these executives dead. So Blue Cross in a couple of states have said that they're no longer going to pay for anesthesia for surgeries that go beyond a certain time. This, by the way, reflects some new Medicare rules that have been imposed by the federal government, but we'll ignore that for the moment. And so Austin Reef posts this, and she says, well, he's manufacturing an outrage campaign over a journalist posting about the settlement. No, that's not what you posted about, the sentiment.
Shoving your words back in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. You're posting about your own sentiment. Don't backtrack. Does the state of America's healthcare system suck? Of course it does. But people shouldn't celebrate murder. Murder, like what happens every year to thousands of innocent Americans killed by greedy insurance executives denying their coverage.
They have nothing to do with that.
But wait, it gets better. So there's this post by Noam Blum, who he's responding to a post that says, "I'm sorry, but what is being debated is not whether the healthcare insurance industry is bad. No one thinks that it functions well, but whether we allow people to execute others if they take part in broken industries. We are playing with fire." And Noam Blum responds, "I'm astounded by the overlap between people who say right-wingers are so radicalized that they're one offhand Trump comment away from murdering people in the street, and people who say, yeah, let's open the door to vigilante murder as a way to combat systemic harm." And I think the most important thing is not the main tweet here and the response from Noam Blum, although I think they're important. What I think is more important is this fella here, Lee Z. I have no idea who he is, 228 followers. They see the world as being like them. Thus, they think everyone is one step away from murdering people in the street. And that's the thing that I find scary. It's the amount of projection. Now, let me make one more logical leap, and then you can tear me apart or agree whatever it is that you're going to do. I assume that you're going to agree, but we'll see. This Daniel Penny case in New York, where he intervened, where the crazy guy was threatening people on the subway, put him in a chokehold. The guy later died. And Daniel Penny was being prosecuted for manslaughter and negligence.
Criminal negligence, right.
The jury could not come to an agreement on manslaughter. Thank goodness. At least one juror is a holdout there, so I'm happy about that. And what the judge did is he said, okay, well, I tell you what. We'll just throw out the negligence charge. And you guys, or not the negligence charge, the manslaughter charge. We'll throw out the manslaughter charge, and then you guys can just, figure out whether he's negligent, which is, as far as I can tell, a way of telegraphing to the jury, we need a guilty verdict here, folks. So you're not going to agree on the manslaughter, so take another stab at the negligence. And let's see if we can come to, some sort of happy medium here, which I think is a perversion of the justice system. And I think it's a perversion of the justice system that he was prosecuted by the same prosecutor who is on record as saying she basically let a murderer off because she felt sorry for him. He was a black fellow who'd had a hard life.
He had a tough life.
And so when he murdered a fellow in the middle of an armed robbery, which, by the way, is felony murder, and in many states would be a capital crime, he gets to walk. But a guy that tried to protect fellow people on the subway doesn't get to walk. And I think Daniel Penny is probably extraordinarily unlucky that the fella he put in a chokehold was a black fella and not a white fella.
Yeah, very much so.
So it's this perversion of justice to try to come up with the person who is the person of privilege killing the oppressed person, even inadvertently. That deserves some sort of reckoning. But if an oppressed person kills a person of privilege, which in the case of what's her name, Doran Yafna, I think is her name, who's prosecuting this particular case, who let the murderer go. I mean, he killed an 87-year-old fella at an ATM. And he just basically got to walk on that and walk away from a capital murder charge. What is creeping into our society, I believe, is a willingness to overlook justice for some sort of I think the term is actually redistributive justice, which is not justice at all. And the number of people who are celebrating the murder of this guy in New York, and also the fact that a jury apparently cannot see that Daniel Penny was a hero, not some sort of crazed vigilante.
Right.
that doesn't say very good things about where we are as a society and where our culture is right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of that. I mean, it's absolutely true that this case should have never, the Daniel Penny case should have never been brought, ever. It doesn't even make any sense. Uh, Defense of others is a tried and true, well known defense. It should carry the day. As a matter of fact, it should preclude the charges from ever being brought, to be
But
honest.
it doesn't. And I can name the states that it doesn't work in. It doesn't work in
Yeah,
California,
California, New York,
New
New
York.
Jersey, Massachusetts, yeah, I mean, Maryland. You can, because these places don't operate on a normal justice system. They operate on this Marxist, rejuvenation of what justice is. Justice is simply the process, right? Even in the best system, guilty people are going to still get off. It will happen. Not always, but it's going to happen. But they get justice, right? The state has to prove its case. This is throwing the book at somebody who did nothing wrong, who did everything right. In fact, what New York is doing with this case is disincentivizing people from protecting others. That makes no sense. We don't want that. I'm not saying that we want vigilantes out there, but I mean, somebody jumping around on a subway car, threatening to kill people and hurt people and threatening people. Yeah, he needs to be restrained. Daniel Penny did it. And the guy was breathing and alive when he left. So I don't even know how they can create proximate cause for his death.
And one
But
should point
well,
out,
they did it with George Floyd too. I mean, kind of the same thing.
yeah, one should point out that Daniel Penny did not draw a knife or a gun on this fella.
Right.
He merely subdued him.
And protected the rest of the passengers on that train who thanked him. There was myriad video from the officers on the scene of the other passengers praising Daniel Penny for stepping up and helping. And there were some other guys there that also helped to restrain the guy, because he was way out of line. He was not in his right mind, and he was going to be harmful to somebody.
My pet conspiracy theory on this is that this is an intentional charge because there is, for whatever reason, an intent in states like New York and California to criminalize self-defense.
Yes. I think that's absolutely right. They are absolutely adamant that only the state has the right to work against crime and defend against crime.
Indeed, California is,
which is ludicrous.
Indeed, California is a duty to flee state.
Right. And yet, if you look at the statistics between, say, California and Florida, Florida is a right to carry state. And it's also, you're under no obligation to back down.
Stand your ground.
You don't have to flee. The crime in California is way worse than it is in Florida. And it's not even, they're really not even comparable. And you can find this across the nation. I think John Locke has done a bunch of studies on this. And I mean, it's just obvious as to how this works. But the only places in red states where you find a breakdown, where you find more crime happening, are in the liberal Democrat-run cities:
Yeah.
Birmingham,
By,
Memphis.
by the way, you just reminded me of a cool little video I saw earlier this week. They got rid of George Gascon up in L.A.
Finally.
And so there was a an asset protection agent at some store. I forget where it was, Target or something like that. He physically stopped somebody from walking out with a shopping cart full of stuff. Stopped him, took the shopping cart away from him, and the guy tried to guy opened his mouth to say something, and the loss protection agent said, "Yeah, George Gascon doesn't work here anymore."
Yeah, Kamala is not the AG of California
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, which is amusing, but it also points out the problem that in states like California and New York, what we call the justice system produces, in many cases, just a perversion of justice.
That's right. There's no equal application of the law. There's no equal application of charging, crimes. People are put back out on the street after illegals get put back out on the street after raping people and molesting young women. They get put right back out on the street, and then they go and do it again, and they end up eventually murdering somebody. This has happened over and over and over again, and we just keep doing it. I mean, that's not justice. That's not crime prevention. That's not even. I mean, that's the wild, wild west.
Yeah, and here's the thing: the number of people who are perfectly happy with this, just like the United Healthcare CEO's murder, people are just giddy with delight at being able to go and crow over it. Basically, he shouldn't have worn that short dress. I mean, that's literally the argument that they're making.
Yeah.
To the people on this jury who clearly are deadlocked over manslaughter. Now, I guarantee you, if I was on that jury, we'd be deadlocked because I would be not guilty, and there's no possible way you're going to convince me otherwise.
Right.
In
Same.
And of course, people do lose sight of the fact, and this is very common in sort of criminal cases, that, the decision that you made at, moment X was a decision you made in a split second of time in a particular emotional state with limited time to try to game out what the possible results might be. And then an entire array of lawyers and judges and jurors will now have, days, weeks, perhaps months to consider every possible alternative that every alternative course of action that you might have pursued from the safety of sort of this academic review of an action that took place in seconds.
Yeah, a decision you had to make in a split second now gets hammered over days and months, and well, you could have done this, you could have done that. Well, but you weren't there. It was it was a go or no go decision. You didn't have that sort of luxury of time. You didn't have to have the time to like weigh all the consequences and the potentialities. I mean, that's just stupid. And you talked about the cultural aspects of this. It's shameful, in my opinion, that we have people who will second guess that sort of bravery, because it is bravery. Getting involved in the situation, I mean, most people won't do it. It takes a certain amount of um, willingness to risk your own body and possibly jail time to enter into that fray, and you're not given any credit for that. And that to me is just anathema.
And there's no way to elide past the fact that the message the state sends by this is not to defend yourself.
Right. Well, like you said before, I mean, your conspiracy theory is that the state wants a monopoly on all things uh, defensive. They don't want people taking any matters into their own hands. I can understand that in certain circumstances. For example, in most states that I know of, let's say you have a tenant who isn't paying rent. In most states, you cannot just go in and start throwing their stuff out of the front door. You have to go through a process. You have to go to court, landlord tenant court in a lot of places. And you have to give them, a fair hearing and let them go through the process. And only once you win, then you have the ability to kick them out. I think that's a preferable outcome than self-help in those sorts of situations. But when it comes to a life or death situation where somebody's threatening people's lives and acting like they might actually do it, you have a split second to make a decision.
And by the way, as the old
may
saying,
choose not to act, but
and by the way, as the old saying goes, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away.
exactly.
And
Especially on the subway.
And by the way,
I mean, those people never show up.
And by the way, on top of this, the Supreme Court has already ruled that police agencies don't necessarily have a duty to
They have no duty to
defend you from crime. They have no duty to protect you.
You cannot sue them for failure to protect.
And here's the thing. This Daniel Penny thing is being treated like an act of vigilantism.
Yeah, this is not Bernard Gates, right? I mean,
yeah, you look like you could use another one. Bang.
I mean, this is an actual threat that was being realized in real time that was stopped. Bernard Gates
Bernie Getz.
Yeah. He kind of took it upon himself to decide whether or not somebody was actually and he got off, didn't he? He got cleared.
I'd have to go back. That was all the way back in the 1980s. I know he's a free man now. I think they did catch him on I think he did pick up a manslaughter rap on that, but I'd have to go back and look. But I mean, he was wandering through New York.
He was looking for trouble
with an illegal firearm, just looking for somebody to shoot. And when the opportunity presented himself, he shot 4 guys. Actually, I don't think I'm not sure he actually killed any of them because he did have a 22.
I don't think he killed anybody, but he definitely took down some people.
Yeah, and of course the famous line, one of them didn't look hurt badly enough, so he said, "You look like you could use another one," and shot him again. Look, that's vigilantism. I
sympathize with the feeling. I don't agree with it,
especially in James Lindsay and was it Bernie Koch's New York, or Bernie Koch? That was a wild time in New York.
It was Escape from New York time, yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's clear vigilantism. And, look, we make a deal by having a system of justice and by having cops, which is we're going to let the justice system handle evildoers. So, probably one of the most famous videos ever is this father who is standing at a pay telephone booth while the police are marching the man who molested his son through the courthouse, and he pulls a pistol out and just shoots the guy in the head. Again, understandable reaction,
Right.
but that breaks the deal. The
Yes.
deal is we have a system to handle these people. And he would most likely have been convicted and most likely been sent to prison. And in prison as a child molester, he may have faced a number of extrajudicial
It
consequences
wouldn't have
for
lasted
that.
long.
But the fact is, that's the deal we make.
Right.
And on the other
And we
side,
prefer that deal because otherwise we're in an honor system
right,
where we're having duels and, everybody's, the Hatfields and McCoys,
but
and we don't want that.
but the state plays a part in that deal too, which is you get to defend yourself because we can't be in all places at all
Right.
times. We can't protect all people. The best that we can do as a police agency, and what we do 99% of the time, is we show up after the bad thing has happened and we figure out who did it.
15 minutes later. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can stop the bad thing from happening, we're going to let you walk on that because you had to protect yourself at a time when there was no one but you to be able to do it. There was no agent of the state available. And so that's the deal we make. Once,
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you're out in the middle of the country, right? You're on a farm somewhere, you're miles from any major metropolitan area. Do you really expect the police to show up very quickly? No, of course you don't.
look, I spent
And
2 years in North Dakota in the missile field guarding nuclear missiles.
they
And
mine it.
yeah, and if something happened, I had like a 45-minute response time to get to some places. That's the reality of, living, especially, of course, in that case, in a, well, almost completely rural state. Yeah, so we make this deal. If things happen and things get out of hand, somebody attacks us, we get to defend ourselves. But once you guys show up, it's your show. And anything
Right.
more that I do at that point, that's vigilantism. We've defined vigilantism, well, we've defined self-defense now basically as vigilantism. I just don't see how
Yeah, that's
a
the cultural
society,
aspect that you were talking about.
yeah,
And it's not good.
I don't see how you maintain a stable society.
Well, look at what's going on in Europe. I mean, that's basically how they've been defining it for decades. You're not allowed to self-help at all. There was that guy Tony something who had been robbed several times at his farm, and the burglars came in. He shot him, and they arrested him
Yeah, for manslaughter.
because he wasn't allowed to shoot the burglar. Now, there are long-standing common law rules about protecting property with deadly force. That's been around for a very long time. Like you can't set booby traps. That's like you have a house. You can't put booby traps in your house that you don't stay in all the time, and something that would uh, horribly maim or kill a person. That's been around for literally 800 years. But if you're in, so then there's the castle doctrine, which is not uniformly followed throughout uh, uh, the Anglosphere, much less through the states. But in the states where you have the castle doctrine, such as here in Virginia, Florida, Texas, places like that, somebody comes into your home, you are absolutely in your rights to think that they are going to hurt you. And you have absolute permission to use deadly force to repel them. In New York, Maryland, California, nope, can't do that. And that's a very cultural thing. It's putting the lives of murderers, burglars, and other sort of trespassers above the life of the actual owners. And that's just wrong. It's antithetical to everything this country was founded on.
Yeah, but look, it's not just it's slightly worse than the way that you phrased it, I think. Because what they are doing is they are placing the lives of evildoers above the lives of innocent people.
Right.
Is that when push comes to shove and there is a conflict where deadly force is used, it's more important that the criminal do it.
The evildoers get a higher say.
Yeah, the evildoers get the say. We were having this several years ago when I was a military policeman. We were having this discussion about when we might shoot someone and when we shouldn't shoot someone. And even back then, I'm talking about in the 80s, there was a growing sentiment that unless somebody had actually opened fire on you, you were not supposed to shoot back. And, my response was always, wait a second, this is not some game we're playing with Marquis of Queensberry rules. I'm not obligated to give you a free shot at me with deadly force before I can respond. If the threat exists, then I can reasonably respond to the threat. I don't have to walk away with a bullet in me to prove that I was in the right.
Right. Yeah, the first shot doctrine, right? You don't. It should not be incumbent upon the protectors of life and property to resort to least measures. That makes no sense, because that's only going to embolden, as you call them, the evildoers.
Yeah, and to go back to your point about the home invasion, the second you step into my home, the only safe assumption that I can make is that you are there to do me harm, grave bodily harm, or kill me, because you're invading my home.
Or your wife, or your animals, or,
Yeah,
somebody.
I can't make any other assumption.
No, it'd be stupid otherwise.
Yeah, and force you to prove that you're there. But by the time you prove that you're there to do something wrong, it's too late.
Let's have a discussion.
But there are so many people now who have just accepted this. And some people have accepted to the point where it's so silly it doesn't even comport with reality. Like anytime there's a police shooting, and I'm not saying all police shootings are good, but there's always the question, why did you have to shoot him, X number of times? Why did you have to shoot him in the chest? Why couldn't you have shot him in the leg?
Yeah,
because this isn't
never made any sense.
Because this isn't Paladin or Have Gun Will Travel. This is the real world where
center mass
that's
till they
done.
Go down.
And one of the weirdest experiences
till the freaking magazine is empty.
Yeah, and one of the weirdest experiences of my life, after having gone through normal police shooting training here in the United States, was being stationed inside the Netherlands, where we had to abide by the Dutch rules of engagement. And even when you go into the shooting range, they wanted all of your aimed shots at the legs. And then they had one little drill where if someone had a gun, and they were pointing it at you, you might not have the time to carefully aim at the legs, because that's their thing. If you have the time, you have to aim at the legs. You have to shoot to wound them, not to kill them. Which, by the way, is a galactically stupid idea. Let's say I shoot
because the hand still works.
Yeah, let's say I shoot you in the leg. I can still nick your femoral artery, and you are gone in minutes. But then
Could you shoot at the groin?
Yeah. But then if it was a really serious situation, you had no time to respond, the only thing you could do, they did say, yes, you would, in that case, you're allowed to shoot into center of mass. So the drill was, You draw, you shoot into center of mass, then you pause. Because you have to be sure that you don't need to shoot a second shot if the first shot works.
Indiana Jones rules. I get it.
And I was like, okay, but let's say you do shoot somebody center of mass. Let's say it goes through and punctures a lung.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't put him down.
The answer's still free.
The answer is you fire until the threat is gone. But this idea has been creeping in to our society since the 60s. You can go back to the 60s and the way they were talking about the root causes of crime and how we had to understand criminals and our sentences were too harsh. By the 1980s, we got tired of that. And we backed away from that completely. I thought we had learned a lesson, but apparently history only begins yesterday. And now it seems to me that we're right back to where we were in the cities with this sociological definition of crime and what it means.
Well, let's look at it from the other side too, from the criminal side. What makes them push these risks? Why are they so willing to take these risks? I mean, I kind of feel like they're encouraged to, that they can, die for a noble cause. I mean, we've heard about like suicide by cop, that kind of crap.
Yeah.
But is there some incentive on their part to push things further than they need to go? Because if I know somebody's going to just gun me down, well, I'm going to be thinking twice about taking that action. If I feel like they may have to back off, well, that's just going to embolden me, right?
I should think that there is a diminution of the deterrent aspect. And so,
yeah, there's
one of the things that you find, and I think John Lott did a study on this, in areas where guns are strictly controlled, home invasion robberies are far more
I said
common.
John Locke earlier. John Lott. Yes, that's right.
John Locke. John Locke was different.
Yes, he was. Very good, but not the same.
So it makes sense to me. I mean, if you live in a place where, like New York, right? They've had strict gun control in New York forever. And therefore, you can be reasonably assured that the average person is not going to have a firearm in their home because it is, unless you're basically rich or famous, it's essentially impossible to get a firearm license in New York City. And therefore, nobody has guns at home. And so if you break into somebody's apartment there, it's pretty safe. And, you always see in the, like the sitcoms, oh, here's a baseball bat. I'm sorry. I don't want to be trotting down the stairs with a baseball bat, which by the way, in New York and California, you don't trot down the stairs with a baseball bat because that can be construed that you are hunting the person who broke into your house.
Fucking ridiculous.
And then, and it has so pervaded our society that look, I'm just going to come right out and say it. The whole Black Lives Matter thing was built on a lie.
Yep.
Derek Chauvin did not kill that guy. Even the medical examiner said, oh yeah, he was full of fentanyl. And he had all kinds of health problems.
All kinds of stuff. He was filled with fentanyl, pot, methamphetamine, like all kinds of stuff. His heart stopped. But he was complaining. If you ever watch, I don't know how many people have ever watched it, but you can actually watch the entire tape.
Oh yeah.
They're just trying to put him in the car. And he's complaining he can't breathe. Just putting him in the car.
But he
wouldn't go in the car.
But here's the thing. We've made a hero out of, or at least a decent proportion of society, made
I
a
don't think we
hero,
did that.
made a hero out of him. And they were
They
willing
have a
to.
fucking statue of him.
And this guy that Daniel Penny killed, oh, by the way, his parents have come out of the woodwork
Yeah, they're suing Daniel Penny now
for
for
wrongful
like
death.
$20 million or something.
Yeah. I got bad news for you. There was no possible way that guy was going to make $20 million in his life.
No.
So, good luck with that amount. Oh, and by the way, Daniel Penny, just some normal 9 to 5 guy. You're not going to get a dime out of him.
Well, he is an architect.
Yeah, well.
Art Vandelay.
Yeah, good. Architects don't make that much money. Not 20 million.
Do.
Not 20 million. The other thing that happened this week. By the way, when I say we, because okay, chat, give me a break. When I say we, I mean American society in general. It's not that I'm accusing you personally of having made the guy a hero, but the fact is he was made a hero. And I'm not going to speak in the passive voice. Many people in this country made him a hero. And look, it's the same thing with the guy that got shot by that cop, the hands up, don't shoot lie.
Brown.
Yeah,
Derek
Michael Brown. There was no
Michael
hands
Brown.
up, don't shoot. He went for the cop's gun. They wrestled over the gun. Oh, and he lost. Good riddance is all I have to say. And by the way, the guy had just done a strong arm robbery of a convenience store 5 minutes before.
Right.
So, all these pictures of him as a scholar in his cap and gown.
Yeah. It's funny how that's always the pictures that they show. It's the same with what's it, Trayvon?
Yeah, Trayvon Martin. They showed a picture of him whenever he was like 12 or 13. That was the only picture you saw.
It's like, what the fuck?
And by the way, that's where we got the term white Hispanic.
That's right.
Because all of a sudden being
poor guy.
Because being Hispanic, you could just magically be white now.
Yeah. Well, if you shoot a black guy, obviously you're white.
Yeah. This kind of redistribute. Now I can't say the word. Redistributionist or redistributive justice is not justice at all. And
no,
the point that
it's targeted.
And there's a reason why we've made the deal that we've made with the states, or at least historically, with the state in terms of use of force and vigilantism and all of that. Because the reality is, the reason we have a law and a justice system and the reason that it's supposed to be fair and impartial is not to protect you. It's to protect the criminals from you. And also any innocent people who might get caught up in the net that you cast if you've been pissed off. That's exactly
right. Yes.
So if the state cannot provide security, people will provide their own security. And when
it's a natural instinct.
And when people provide their own security, it gets super ugly. And it is the height of irresponsibility for the state to make taking the law into your own hands seem like the only justice you can achieve.
Yeah, when you take away all other options, I mean, the right to life, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, life and liberty. We take that seriously here in America. It's not taken all of seriously elsewhere.
Yeah, well, we don't even take it.
And you're right, not all of it. That's
we
true.
Don't take it seriously on the West Coast or in the Northeast. We take it seriously in flyover country, but not in any of the quote unquote elite areas of the country.
Outside of the Northeast corridor and the West Coast and like the actual coast.
Yeah, where the supposedly smart, pretty people live.
Right.
Which
there aren't a lot of pretty people in LA.
Yeah. By the way, I did want to talk to you just legally about this thing with the judge just dismissing the manslaughter charge and then sending him back on the negligence charge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you don't have the manslaughter charge, what's the predicate for the negligence?
So criminal negligence is easier to prove. You don't have to have a state of mind. The manslaughter charge requires a mental state of intentionality, right? So the state has to prove that you intended the result of your actions. With criminal negligence, there's no intent involved. It's basically reckless endangerment. You acted without any thought at all. So it's easier to prove for the state. And I'm a little worried that Penny is going to be in danger of being convicted on that because it is easier to prove for the state. Now, the defense would be, I reacted in the moment, right?
Yeah, but
and then it's going to be up to the jury to believe them. I mean, honestly, they have to basically come to the conclusion that he acted non-negligently. In other words, he did not do anything that caused the possibility of death.
Okay, so another question, and before I get to that question, the reason for my inappropriate smile earlier was California is a state where they plea bargained a guy down to unintentional negligent manslaughter.
Right.
Which means that he unintentionally was negligent.
Right.
Which resulted it was a plea bargain.
Unintentional negligence is like basically saying the same thing.
Yeah, it was just a weird thing.
It just means that he didn't act recklessly.
Yeah, but the question is, this case has already gone to the jury. Jury
Yes.
is already deliberating. So if the jury comes back to the judge and then says, okay, we're deadlocked on, charge one, and without that, we have no conviction. How normal is it for the judge to go, well, I tell you what, let's just get rid of that pesky charge that you're deadlocked on?
That is definitely a little weird. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but that's not the norm. Typically, a judge, in my experience, and I have no criminal litigation experience, but from the things I've read and followed and pay attention to, it would typically be move on to the second charge. So it's basically a lesser included charge. And you would have the jury deliberate on that before dismissing the other one. Now, you got to understand, too, that once the case goes to the jury for deliberation, jeopardy attaches. It's already kind of attached before that, but there's no way to, other than a mistrial, to save those charges.
Yeah, there's no second bite at that manslaughter charge.
Right. Unless you have a mistrial, a hung jury, and then the prosecution has the option of bringing the case again.
Which I can't imagine they would not do.
Well, when the judge dismissed the primary charge of manslaughter, it's gone. It's with prejudice. You cannot bring that charge again.
Even if there's a mistrial on the other charge?
Yes. You can only bring that other charge.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the fact that the jury didn't walk back in 15 minutes later after
I'm
everybody had had a chance to
shocked.
go to the bathroom. It
I'm
doesn't
absolutely
look good.
shocked that there are people that wanted to convict him. I don't even understand their thinking. But like you were saying, this is a cultural thing that they don't think people should intervene at all. And I don't understand that thinking. That's just not it's not native to me. It's not instinctual to me. It's very extra ordinary to me.
There's an old saying, and I don't know where it comes from, but from philosophy, which is if you are kind to the evil, you will be cruel to the innocent. And
It's a good saying because that's exactly how it works.
that seems to
You
be the
know,
society that we're building at least on the West Coast and in the Northeast. And
yeah, in certain places. Yeah.
and the
Well, the
number of
places that
people
get the most attention from the news.
yeah, and the number of people who are happy to live in that environment is astounding to me.
Yeah, well, good luck when everything fails. I mean, how are you going to survive? You're not going to be able to survive. You won't. I mean, you cannot survive without a state apparatus at your beck and call,
Yeah, that's the
which aren't
problem.
even really at your beck and call.
No, they're at your convenience. But anyway, we've talked about this for almost an hour now, and there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. One of which is the Scrimeti case that hit the Supreme Court this week over Tennessee's ban on
Minor
sex change operations for minors.
minors. Yeah.
And I just did a quick Google search on it. So, the Supreme Court's hearing on trans rights was bigotry masquerading as law. Again, we're talking about.
They haven't even issued an order yet.
Yeah, but we're talking about. Well, let's remember what we're talking about. This is not some guy who at 25 decides I want to be a chick and I want to start wearing a dress and I want to go through.
Yeah,
I
fine.
want to
Go for it.
transition.
Do it.
We're talking about children who will receive irreversible medical procedures, and the
Who
person
can't get a tattoo,
yeah
who can't buy
pierce their
beer.
ears.
Right.
But and by the way, one of the arguments that was made at this was, oh, these trans kids can know they're trans as young as 2.
What?
Really?
They don't even know what sex is at that point.
Yeah, but let's continue. The conservative justices know nothing about the people whose lives they are trying to ruin.
Jesus.
The children whose genitals you want to remove. Conservatives are constructing a bad faith argument against trans rights at the Supreme Court. It's worked for them before. Let's see, Daily Wire. I think we know what side they're going to be on since Matt Walsh was outside the courtroom. Conservative Supreme Court. Let's make that clear. It's a conservative Supreme Court. To rule on the right to be trans, medical care, parents' rights, constitutional sex discrimination, and the right to be different. It is ruling on none of those things. It's literally ruling on none of those things.
I will say this. The parents' rights argument is challenging. It's very it's very touchy because most of us who argue for parents' rights over their children are the ones who are saying, yeah, get this porn out of my kid's school, that sort of thing, right? We want to have a say in whether or not my daughter gets an abortion, right?
Okay.
There
Sure.
is an argument to make. I'm not saying that I'm convinced by it, but it's a tougher argument. I think it's a good argument. I don't think it's insurmountable, but it's a little bit tougher to counter. Is hey, it's my kid. He says he's trans, or she says she's trans. This is what they want to do. I have the right to guide them through this.
Okay, what if your 14-year-old daughter wants to have sex with a 36-year-old?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
Is it your right as a parent to allow that? Should you invite the 36-year-old into your home so that they
you
can have
do not have that right.
so that they can have sex in your daughter's bedroom under your careful supervision? How would that be different from prostituting out your daughter in a child
Right.
pornography? Yeah, this parent's right is
But
I have the right
you
to
see where there's like there's a line there that you've got to.
Yeah, the line is once you start performing irreversible medical procedures on your children, you are no longer
That's what I
protecting them.
think. It's the fact that these things are, and they lie to us all the time and say, no, 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 you can totally reverse all this stuff. No, you can't. There are actual irreversible um, products from this line of treatment. Uh, there's a lot of sterility that shows up.
Yeah, but look, you're just
Um,
talking about the puberty blockers.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
talking about fully transitioning, sex
Oh,
change
yeah, yeah, yeah.
surgery.
Cutting off stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how that is permissible in the medical world. First do no harm.
Wait,
I mean,
permissible? I'm afraid you're behind the times. It's not permissible. The fact that you don't allow it is horrifying. The implications of these arguments are horrifying. I mean,
if you're
imagine.
cutting off healthy breasts
Yeah.
and cutting off healthy penises and balls, no, that there is nothing. That's not even cosmetic surgery, right? I mean, that's a consequential thing that cannot be reversed.
No, it cannot be. And it almost invariably means that you will have some diminution of sexual function and sexual pleasure.
Right.
Um,
I mean, we get all up in arms about clitorectomies in northern Africa, northwestern or northeastern Africa. Well, we're doing the same goddamn thing to our kids right here.
and by the way, in Iran, they have a huge number of transsexuals. The reason is because if you are homosexual,
Right.
your choice is okay. Here's what you get: you get a
You
sex
can
change.
be
You can
gay and die, or you become another thing.
yeah. That's the choice they're offering. And there are certain gay activists now who are saying, wait a second, aren't we just committing, and I can't wait for this argument to take hold, you're just committing a genocide against gay men.
Well, and it's true, and we know this. We've known this for a long time. The LGB community has finally kind of caught up, and they're like, "Wait a minute, we don't want all this tea, whatever else crap." We fought a long time. Stonewall was back in the 70s. We fought a long time to get the rights that we have, to get the recognition that we have, to get the ability to be ourselves out in public. And God bless them. I have no problems with that.
Okay, by the way, a
The fact
comment.
that the trans and all the other crap gets added onto it, and here's what really gets me: lesbian, gay, and bi. That's all sexual orientation. But according to the trans community itself, it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. It's just how we feel about ourselves, how we want to express ourselves. Then why did you attach yourself to this, which has nothing to do with any of what you're talking about? I'd be
Well,
pissed if I was lesbian,
yeah,
gay,
well,
or straight.
they're trying
I
to
mean, I'm a little bit lesbian. I'll give you,
they're
be
trying to
honest.
they're trying to piggyback on the success of the gay rights movement. I mean, the gay
Yeah,
rights movement got everything they wanted. right? They got
Yes.
it
They have gay
decriminalized.
marriage.
They got gay marriage. They're done.
Yeah.
And
They've reached the mountaintop.
the problem is with activists, as it so often is, as the Southern leadership, um, was it the
The
Southern
the
SPLC, the
yeah,
Southern,
yeah.
yeah,
Southern Poverty
yeah, the
Leadership
Southern
Council.
Poverty Law Center. That's it.
Law Center. That's it.
This is not the 1960s, and they don't have any laws that they can go after. Like Jim Crow is gone. And so now we have to make up an entirely new mission because we can't just shut this puppy down.
Yeah, always beware any kind of agency or program that has a self-defined defeating purpose. So once they get to that purpose, they're not just going to go away. They got to keep those jobs. They're going to keep finding shit. Always,
Yeah,
always,
they
always.
have to maintain a reason for existing. They can
Right.
never say the problem is solved. And so hence the problems never get solved.
Look at the UN.
From chat, thanks for weighing in, chat. Oh, by the way, it's the Talmud, apparently. If you are kind to the cruel, you will end up being cruel to the kind. So that's apparently where that came from. And also, sex correction surgery is pretty common for infants born with certain conditions, which is
Very
fascinating.
few.
Yeah, which is fascinating, but irrelevant to the topic at hand.
Yeah. Intersex it's a phenom. I mean, it's one of those weird genetic things that happens, but it happens like 1 in 1,000 people. And 99% of the time, the doctors know whether it's more female or male. These aren't these are really cosmetic things. They're not life-changing things, and they're done when you're firstborn.
An infant. Well, when you're assigned a sex at birth.
I hate that term.
Yeah, just
hate that.
the very nature of that language makes it sound as if some arbitrary decision
Right.
was made.
Yeah, there's some like,
It could have gone either way, and yet they just picked something for you that, may not even.
I hate that phrase. It's absolute bullshit. I knew what every one of my children was before they were born.
The trouble is that it's almost impossible to have a rational conversation about this. BioWare,
Because there's no rationality involved in the conversation.
like BioWare came out with the newest Dragon Age game last month. One of the characters is non-binary. And I don't care about that as a philosophy. What I found fascinating was the way that they've written this character. So you're introduced to this character. Her name is Tosh, and she is.
I thought she was non-binary.
Yeah. She's non-binary, but you're introduced to her, and she is a Kunari, which is one of the races in the Dragon Age universe. They have gray skin and big horns and stuff like that, and in the course of the conversation, you make an assumption because she's Kunari and she's wearing Kunari clothes and wearing traditional Kunari ropes on her arm. You make the mistake of assuming that she follows the Kun. And she says she doesn't, and you go, but you wear the ropes. And she says, I wear what I want to wear. I wear a lot of things. That doesn't mean you get to tell me who I am.
You're telling me who you are.
Yeah, wait. That's like, that's a level of writing. That's like going up to a police officer in a game and saying, hello, officer, I've lost my child. How dare you assume that I'm a police? Just because I'm wearing a badge and a uniform doesn't mean
There's somebody wearing a Cubs shirt.
You don't get to tell me who I am.
Oh, you're a Cubs fan. No, I'm a White Sox fan.
And there's another scene with the same character where you're meeting with her mother and you're going to sit down at dinner. And she comes in, serves the trays, sits down at the table and says, "So, I'm non-binary." And her mother asks, "What does that mean?" And she says, "It means I don't feel like a man or a woman." Oh, well, for our people, there is a term for people who are uncomfortable with their sexual. Why do you have to pick at it? What is that? Nobody's picking at anything. We're just sitting down for dinner. You plop yourself in the seat and you go, "So, I'm non-binary," and we're just supposed to. It's like the joke that Bill Burr told about
Yeah.
what's his name, Bruce Jenner. Hey, you got to give me a minute, okay? You got to allow me to ask some questions to try to pick. It just doesn't. You don't. But the thing is, nobody was picking at it. You came in and brought the subject up.
Yeah. You forced it on us.
But this.
Why are you so obsessed
But
with
here's the thing: the expectation of the people who developed that game, since the old BioWare is now gone, and there's never going to be another Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2. I got bad news for you. That studio is dead. But the people who are there now, they think those are perfectly reasonable conversations.
Right.
That just to come in and declare yourself non-binary, you now have this moral authority that no one can ever question. That's not
so there's
the
this
way the world
actress
works.
who is in Oppenheimer, who just came out as, and I'm quoting, trans-masculine non-binary. It's like, what? You can't have masculine and non-binary in the same description. Like,
oh, yes,
you're
you
choosing
can.
a side. I mean, it's just, it doesn't, it's just all wish-washy stuff. None of it makes any sense. And now we have all these people who are identifying in college as non-binary and this and that and the other thing. They're all normal people. They're just choosing these rather weird terms to describe themselves,
I think,
so they can fit into the in crowd.
I think we're in the middle of a mass psychogenic illness.
I agree, absolutely.
One of the comments on the quote from Inebriated Plutarch about Dragon Age: in a medieval fantasy setting. Yeah. The other thing about Dragon Age is, remember, this is a medieval fantasy setting, as Inebriated Plutarch points out, with, magic and wizards. But in the character creator for the game, we are making your character who lives in a world of magic and wizards. You can have top surgery scars.
Couldn't you just make yourself whatever you want to be?
If you had the choice between going to the wizard and getting some magic done on you, or just going to some medieval barber and having them hack off your breasts.
Hey, I would love to have some huge boobs right here. Yeah. I would never leave my room.
And in a world of magic, you could have them without scars. It's just... It's this level of virtue signaling.
That's exactly what it is.
Which is part of this psychogenic illness, because
it requires. What exactly is the virtue?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you wiser. It doesn't make you kinder. Why do people think it does? That's the weird, again, mass psychogenic illness. It's just a way of saying that you are special. And in a world where, everyone is special, no one is special. But
where we all get a trophy?
Yeah, everybody gets a trophy. And so you're, non-binary.
So
whatever.
We created this. Not but...
We? What do you mean we? I didn't. Thank you.
No, I didn't either.
Thank you for me. I now get to hit you back with what you hit me with just half an hour ago.
But I mean, this is something I think our society has created. The everybody gets a trophy, everybody's a winner. It's Lake Wobegon. Everybody's above average.
And by the way, you have to tell everyone about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you have to speak out about it. You have to be vocal, sing your praises. Oh, Jesus.
Nobody walks around town saying, "Hey, I, had sex with my girlfriend last night. That was really great." I mean, you could, but you'd be a lunatic. Nobody cares. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you unusual. It doesn't make.
If you're 13, it might, but
yeah, it's well, and it makes whoever you had sex with a criminal. But it's weird, and I can only explain it through psychogenic illness. It has to be. It just has to be this sort of cultural.
It's a sort of mass
mental
psychosis,
illness. Yeah, that's just being passed around.
And it's not just here. It's
oh no, it's the entire
it's throughout the
West.
Western world.
It's the entire West, and it's done with the full connivance of and assistance of all of the apparatus of the state.
Yes, absolutely. And you notice that it doesn't happen in the Eastern world. It doesn't happen in Africa. They're not down with this crap at all.
No, in fact,
it only happens in Western societies.
I saw an interesting story yesterday about an American woman. She's living in Japan currently. It was late in the afternoon on an empty residential street. She grabbed her kid and just jaywalked across this empty residential street. She was stopped by a well-dressed older Japanese gentleman who said to her, in perfect English apparently, "The downfall of society begins with the individual."
Because she jaywalked?
Because she jaywalked. Even though there was no traffic.
Rule followers.
Yep.
They are definitely rule followers. You find that in Scandinavia too.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot of social.
And it's these very homogenous societies that, they have learned how to get along with one another by observing these rituals and rules.
And
we used to have that.
And they have built.
We had that.
And they have built high trust in those societies.
Right. Yeah.
America.
And we've talked about Scandinavia, I don't know how many times, about how different it is there for people, how egalitarian it is.
America used to be
Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time, right?
Sure, but America used to be a relatively high trust society, and it longer is.
Until we let the experts take over. And became a DRG system.
The experts. Oh, goodness. All right, look, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to hit a couple of things real quick. Chris and I had a conversation today. Everything that I've learned about Pete Hegseth, and I'm a guy, as I told Chris, I'm a guy who believes that a president, absent something absolutely disqualifying, bribery, criminal, whatever, the president should have a presumption that he gets his picks for office.
Yeah.
Having said that, everything I learn about Pete Hegseth, the more I learn about him, the more I think he's a piece of shit.
Really? I'm surprised.
He's cheated on all three of his wives. His second marriage ended when he got his producer at Fox News pregnant.
He's a horny guy.
Yeah, he's a horny guy. And he seems to have had a very cavalier attitude towards things that, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be confirmed. I'm just saying he seems like a huge jerk and not a very moral guy. And of course now he's coming back talking about how much he loves the baby Jesus and he's really turning his life around. And I believe that as much as I believe, prisoners on death row whenever they are talking to the parole
they find
board.
Jesus. Yeah.
So
Look, I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is what he's going to do. And what he's going to do is exactly what needs to happen. And if he can do that without fear, great. That's what needs to happen. We need somebody to go in there, be fearless, and cut the waste, get rid of the DEI, get our military back into shape. Now, maybe he only lasts a year or two. Fine. We need a wrecking ball in there.
yeah,
We have to upset the current status quo.
yeah, but
It has to be redone.
Here's the thing: with all the questions about his personal life, I'm increasingly unconvinced that he is confirmable.
I don't know. I mean, Joni Ernst walked back her rather morbid comments on his candidacy. So I'm thinking he's going to get confirmed. And I think he should be confirmed just to do that job, to clean house. This is the first order of business: clean house.
You know, he and Kash Patel seem to be the lightning rods. And by the way, we haven't even started about Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., and what's going to happen when they start questioning him, because we can pull up all kinds of video, and I'm sure they will, on RFK saying some pretty wacky stuff. And
he was big time on that whole autism and vaccine train.
That's
back in the 90s.
Yeah, well, there's some other trains he's been on.
And there's some other trains as well. Now,
he's going to have
some good ideas.
Yeah, and by the way, the FDA says they're thinking they're going to get rid of red dye number 5 and make it illegal to put it in food over the next couple of weeks.
They have said that for how long? I mean, back in the 70s they were saying that.
Well, maybe they really mean it this time.
Yeah, right.
But the two lightning rods now are Hegseth and Kash Patel. And I would have thought that Hegseth had a better end than Kash Patel does, because Kash Patel has also said some pretty wacky things about, revenge and going out. It makes people uncomfortable when the potential head of the FBI starts talking about revenge, because obviously we have norms here. And I got to say, that is an almost willful misreading of what Kash Patel is talking about. What he's talking about when he's talking about revenge against these people and a reckoning. And you want to talk about norms. The FBI was lying to FISA judges about Donald Trump. The FBI was pushing the Steele dossier before Trump was
on the wrist.
Before Trump was president.
Was the most anybody got.
Yeah, but this all started before Trump was president. They knew that this was BS, and they went with it.
They were spying on him.
Anyway.
They were literally spying on him.
And I've heard people like Jonah Goldberg, who I used to respect, talking about how, when Trump comes along and he gets rid of these norms, no. It's not that the FBI has to do this because Trump got rid of the norms. Trump wasn't even president. If you want to look at the people who were violating norms, it's the FBI, which, by the way, why should that shock us? The FBI has been violating norms since its inception. The only reason that we let them get away with it for so long was because, frankly, J. Edgar Hoover was pretty good at finding commies and bank robbers. But let's not pretend that the FBI...
We had a couple decades where the FBI was pretty good. And then in the Clinton years, it started going south again. And it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, and so Kash Patel is going after people who need to be gone after.
Yes.
And so all these... So
this is the thing, too, is that people expect, voters expect scalps. We have not seen any kind of actual, justice done when it comes to these people who have violated our very rights.
Yeah,
when the CIA and the FBI are spying on us
and pointing a finger at Donald Trump and saying, "Well, we only did it because Orange Man bad," isn't gonna fly.
Bullshit. No.
And Andrew McCabe coming out and talking about how, Kash
Fuck that
Patel
motherfucker.
is a pretty
He should
bad.
be in jail already.
Yeah, you should be in jail. You should be tossing in your little bon
He
mot
got his
from a
pension
federal
reinstated.
prison. Yeah.
That
And
fucker.
people,
We're paying that motherfucker.
here's the thing. People don't want revenge. They want a reckoning.
Exactly. A reckoning. That's exactly what we need. That was the word I was searching for. We need a reckoning. And it's been too long. The last time, hell, when was the last time anybody in the government went to jail?
Oh, and by the way,
Even
the guy who doctored the evidence in front of the FISA judge got his law license back.
he got it back.
Yeah, apparently.
That Christian, whatever his name was. That's just ridiculous.
Look, it's not revenge to say, hey, these people.
No, I like the word you had, reckoning.
Yeah,
I think it's a reckoning.
Yeah, but again, it is a reckoning because it's not revenge. We're not just going after innocent people and catching them up in this dragnet because they believe the wrong things.
No, it's these wrongdoers who are getting their comeuppance.
These are people who committed crimes and
Right.
who need to be prosecuted. It's not some perversion or politicization
Why
of
isn't
the
John
justice
Brennan
system.
in jail? Why isn't James Clapper in jail? Why isn't Eric Holder in jail?
All good questions.
I've always had it in for that motherfucker.
All good questions.
I mean, these are people who have violated the law repeatedly and without any sense of remorse and certainly no consequences. Hillary Clinton should be in jail. I mean, I don't expect that to ever happen, but she should be in jail.
But now, instead of facing any consequences, apparently the White House is talking about blanket preemptive pardons, just like the one Hunter Biden got. I'll just pardon you for any crime you committed or may have committed.
Interesting that it went back 11 years.
Even though you haven't been charged with anything,
right?
I can preemptively pardon you.
Let's just go cover my ass.
Look, you can make the argument that was appropriate for Ford to do for Dick Nixon. But for some bureaucrat in the FBI or the CIA or the NSA, just to say, hey, did you commit any crimes? You know what? Don't even tell us that. We'll just say whether you committed any crimes or not, you're free. Nobody can ever prosecute you for anything. I don't, and unfortunately, it is written that way, but I certainly don't think that the framers ever thought that the pardon power would be used in that way.
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty lax on, I mean, it's pardon power. And, you get to use it any way you want. I don't really have a lot to say about it, to be quite honest. You're entitled to do it.
But, maybe it would have been more prudential to give the pardon power to pardon crimes that had been prosecuted and for which you were convicted?
In retrospect, yes.
I mean,
we can always pass an amendment. Good luck.
Yeah, we can. You can always pass an amendment. You can always reason with a brick wall for all the good that'll do you. So anyway, look, it is 6:30. It's about time for us to 6:30. Yeah, 6:30. So it's about time for us to shut her down so that we don't bore everybody for another hour. Yeah, I know. Time zones. How do they work?
All right, love you.
Have a good week, Mike. Love you, man. We'll talk to you later. And for everybody else, thanks for watching the video podcast, videocast, TV show, whatever the hell it is. Thanks for watching. Hope you're watching again next time. We'll see you then. So long.